What is going on, Lucid fans? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to do a little bit more of a different video. I want to talk on the SEC investigation, what ultimately prompted it, where we're at, and some possible outcomes. Because I also have been getting a lot of comments on Twitter and on my videos as well, as far as updates and where we're at. And I do get a strong consensus and feeling that a lot of individuals are not purposely getting into Lucid because of a fear of this investigation. So I'm going to be talking all about that. But before I get into any of that, you guys know the deal. Smash the thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel, want to support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. Greatly appreciate that. With that said, let's get right to it. So I'm just going to first off start and explain what the SEC investigation is, what it entails, and at the end of the day, this may be boring, but this is going to be tying together at the end and make it a lot more understandable for us as investors. So as you can see, it does list some things that the SEC does target, such as fraudulent activities through IPOs or ICOs, insider trading, because we all know that is a big thing as well, account churning, blackout trading. There's a lot of things here, but I do strongly feel that Lucid, and more specifically with SPACs, do fall under this: misrepresentations and omissions by companies, firms, and individuals. And I just want to show you this. The investigation appears to concern the business combinations between the SPAC and certain projections and statements that were said during this time period. So at the end of the day, what they're ultimately saying is that Lucid did say that they were going to have 6,000 vehicles produced in 2021, and they were going to start production in spring of 2021. And we all know technically it did get pushed back a little bit. So this is where it did prompt a more of an investigation. And you can just read it right here. It does say that largely SEC investigations are prompted by complaints from investors, whistleblowers, and so forth. And at the end of the day, I have been saying quite a few times in a lot of videos, all of this was prompted by the PIPE. So you can definitely tell as far as the PIPE investors, it does list right here. So BlackRock, Fidelity, Research LLC, Franklin, Newberg, Wellington Management, and Winslow. So at the end of the day, it does break it down. Most likely it's one of those that did complain, because if you do actually look on the chart, at the end of the day, most likely they did sell on September the 1st. That was when they had their lockup expiration. But if they were under the impression that they were going to have deliveries, 6,000 deliveries by 2021, and not only that, they were actually going to start production in spring of 2021, and as of September nothing happened. This is where a lot of PIPE investors panicked and sold out. They didn't have any faith within Lucid, and at the end of the day, Lucid did turn out to be a golden investment and has an amazing product, so they obviously complained based on that. So this is what prompted the overall investigation, and you can see the very first step is a informal SEC investigation, and that is basically where they learn about the complaint. They kind of vaguely look at that. They do review the available data, so that is the next step. Then it is interviewing witnesses, so most likely going back to the PIPE investors, getting their take on that, explaining exactly what was said to them, in what way, and so forth. So again, that is the next step. Requesting and reviewing additional information and documentation. So that is where, again, they would go back to more so the PIPE investors and get more information from them. Evaluating potential allegations. So this, again, is another kind of a sub-step of requesting and reviewing additional information. Then this one, negotiation with the target's defense counsel. This one isn't particularly relevant for us in this case. Determining the next steps, that's obviously for the SEC, and formal SEC investigation. So this is technically where we're at, more so here, an issuance of the SEC subpoena. So this is technically exactly where we are at right now, because we do know the SEC did subpoena Lucid. So at the end of the day, this is exactly where we're at. So the SEC can issue subpoenas requiring testimony and subpoenas requiring the production of documentation. Testimony is under oath and is when producing documents in response to a SEC's subpoena. Targets and witnesses must be careful to produce all responsive documents. So at the end of the day, what they are looking for from Lucid is exactly those basic criteria to see at the end of the day if Lucid said, you know what, we are delivering 6,000 vehicles in 2021, and we are going to be starting production in spring of 2021. So that is definitely some things that we'll be looking for. They will also most likely as well be looking at Lucid's documentation to see if it was actually even possible ever to start in spring of 2021, or if they did tie in the PIPE investors after already knowing as far as they couldn't meet the spring 2021 starting production. So there's a lot of things going back and forth. Obviously, this is where the SEC does look both sides now. They look from the Lucid side where they do see, okay, you know what, they do have X documentation to prove that they did have everything capable of doing 6,000 vehicles. They have everything to prove they had every intention to start in spring of 2021. So they definitely are looking for as far as if there's any fault from Lucid to see what happened in that regard. And again, on the opposite side, they will be looking more so from the PIPE investors. What was their interpretation of this? Did they know that there was a chance of deliveries getting pushed back? Did they know all this information? So this is where, again, it's going back and forth. I've said in previous videos that if this was severe enough, they definitely, one of the PIPE investors could have sued Lucid hands down. So this is why I am very optimistic about this, because if something was severe enough, there would be a lot of more formal litigation when it comes down to this. But with that, I'm just going to quickly move on as well. So then there is going to be the issuance of Wells notice, presentation for the SEC for review, and then at the end of the day, they do give their actual target and what they're going to be doing. So overall, that's a good summary of everything that you need to know. As far as time frames, this whole thing does typically take 18 to 22 months. So most likely it is fair to say that around September is when they first received the complaint. So at the end of the day, that, like I said, that is when the lockup expiration was. Then again, they could have actually had the complaint start a lot sooner. As soon as spring 2021 came around and they were not essentially doing any deliveries or starting up production, that is when the complaint could have started. So keep in mind, in line with that, 18 to 22 months. So most likely won't be hearing anything anytime soon. Again, going back to my point that at the end of the day, this is no reason not to get into Lucid at all. And I'm going to be talking on some actual outcomes that I do feel is going to be a possible case for Lucid, even if they are found at fault. So that's something to keep in mind. So as well, what you need to also factor in is a lot of SPACs are just getting carried into this, because I know Lucid is a very legitimate company, but a lot of SPACs and their rollout is not legitimate. They do hide a lot of things, and Lucid definitely could have done that. I'm not saying that they did, nor they didn't. I'm just kind of staying impartial in this case. But at the end of the day, it is a complaint, and clearly enough so for the SEC to actually do a subpoena and launch a formal investigation. So it is what it is. As far as us investors and what that actually means for us, potentially some outcomes that could be a result of that is I have seen, and especially from my research I've done, keep in mind I'm not a financial advisor nor an expert at SEC investigations, but from what I've been able to see, even minor accounting errors result in about a $80 million fine. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But when it comes down to something in this regard, in fact, if they are found at fault, most likely it will result in more of a $500 million to $1 billion fine coming from the SEC. And keep in mind, that is very hard to actually research that. Every case in the SEC is different. Same thing as a lawsuit, and everything is different. So when you are trying to piece together something, it is very difficult to do so. So keep in mind that 500 million is my own estimate, and keep in mind that is only an estimate. And one thing I want to also explain is even after this, the SEC might technically just say, you know what, there was some possibly misdoings, but Lucid was in the right mind. They definitely did do everything that they could have done to prevent and notify all the investors. So that is something that definitely could be a result where they potentially would find Lucid not guilty, which AKA is innocent. And the funny thing is, even when I was doing research, there was like a 20-page document virtually explaining that, summarizing that. What ultimately the not guilty factor in the SEC ultimately means innocent. So that's kind of funny about that. That side, definitely that is an option. At the end of the day, SEC investigation could result in Lucid being not guilty, which again would definitely cause the price to go up significantly, because again, going back to this right here, we did drop roughly about 20 to 25% in this time frame, largely because of the fear of the SEC investigation. So again, that is something to keep in mind. In addition to, like I mentioned, a possible outcome, even if Lucid is in the wrong and they get fined, like I said, $500 500 million to 1 billion most likely could be a case. It could be definitely a lot lower than that as well, depending on what the SEC actually does find. Because like I said, there is a severe case that Lucid did try to misrepresent themselves to a lot of investors. So that might be something that might not turn out too well for Lucid. But keep in mind, based on their previous earnings, the basic balance sheet, you can definitely see right here, they have 4.8 billion in cash, 216 million in debt. And this doesn't include that 2 billion that they did accumulate based on their senior debt offering. So roughly about 7 billion, give or take. So at the end of the day, even worst case scenario, they pay 500 million or possibly up to 1 billion as far as the fine. Regarding the SEC investigation, it is what it is. Like I said, it could definitely be lower. It could be 100 million or it could be 200 million. Again, I am saying only as an estimate 500 million, because again, that is what I feel could be the very worst case scenario. And I just want to say that out there. Again, going back to the point, still no reason for you to not get into Lucid, because by the time they actually do come out to a conclusion on this investigation, Lucid will most likely already be around $120 to $140. So that's just as well something to keep in mind. It is one of those things that is just there for FUD, and take that very lightly. With all that said though, let me know your thoughts on this whole SEC investigation in the comments below. If you haven't already, smash a thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. Greatly appreciate that. With all that said, let's all make a lot of money on Lucid.